Previously on the Halloween podcast presents Double Vision. Mason Carter's life takes a terrifying turn after a strange infomercial and one too many drinks reveal twisted doubles of the people around him, including himself. After trying to straighten out, a single drink unravels it all. A violent bar fight with a double lands Mason and Dylan in jail. When Mason opens up about what he's been seeing, Natalie finally believes him. The town is falling apart. Strange violence, missing people, and whispers of something evil spreading fast. In a desperate move, the trio kidnaps Mr. Jenkins, one of the first people Mason saw with a double. What they learned confirms the worst. The doubles are real, they're demons, and they're trying to merge with their human hosts. And just when they think it can't get stranger, a package arrives. The Demon Slayer Deluxe Kit, and it might be their only chance at survival. Let's continue. Chapter 9, The First Kill. For the first time in what felt like weeks, the basement wasn't filled with fear. Mr. Jenkins sat upright in the chair, shaky but conscious. Though his face was pale and his breaths uneven, his eyes were clear, focused, and aware. The presence that had haunted him, controlled him, was gone. Natalie wrapped a blanket around his shoulders while Mason knelt in front of him, watching closely for any lingering signs of the demon. For the first time, there were none.
"You're okay,"
Mason said quietly.
"It's gone."
Jenkins gave a slow nod.
I felt it leave, like a heavy fog lifting all at once.
Dylan stepped closer, holding back his usual sarcasm for once.
"Did you know what was happening while it had you?"
I knew everything.
Jenkins replied, his voice hoarse.
I saw it all, heard everything. I just couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't stop it. It knew I was in there, and it wanted me to know I was powerless. It liked that part.
The words hung heavy in the air.
"But you fought,"
Mason said.
"You pushed back. We helped, but you took your body back."
Jenkins chuckled faintly and rubbed his hands together.
No offense, but you yelling motivational speeches at me was like watching a bad after-school special. I'm just glad it worked.
They untied him, helped him to his feet, and watched as he took a few tentative steps across the basement. He moved like someone waking from a long coma, weak but steady.
I think I need to walk,
Jenkins said.
Feel the ground under my feet again. Clear my head.
"Do you need a ride home?"
Dylan offered. He shook his head with a small smile.
No, I need to do this on my own.
They watched him climb the stairs. Each step a quiet victory in itself.
Did we actually just do that?
Natalie asked once the basement door swung shut.
"I think we did."
Mason said, still in disbelief.
"We barely did."
Dylan replied.
"That was less of an exorcism and more like a group therapy session with shouting."
Natalie laughed once, short, uncertain, but the tension in her shoulders was already easing. Mason noticed something odd. There was a package sitting against the front door. None of them had seen it when they came in.
"Did someone drop something off?"
he asked. Natalie stepped over and opened the door, looking around the porch and the street beyond.
There's no one out there.
She picked up the box, plain and brown, with a glossy sticker slapped across the top. Demon Slayer Kit. Order number 00001.
"You've got to be kidding me."
Dylan muttered as they placed it on the porch table. They opened it carefully, half expecting something absurd or even dangerous to spring out. Inside was a clutter of strange items. A fluorescent green plastic cross, a spray bottle labeled Exorcism Spritz, a sewn patch featuring a cartoon demon with a red X through it, and a small booklet titled, "So You've Spotted a Demon." Dylan grabbed the bottle and took a sniff, recoiling immediately.
That smells like cinnamon gum and mold. If this thing works, I'm never trusting my instincts again.
Natalie held up the neon cross with a raised eyebrow.
This can't be real, right?
Mason didn't know how to answer.
It showed up after we freed Jenkins. Maybe this is how they knew we were ready.
They looked around at each other, unsure whether to laugh or be afraid. It was Dylan who broke the moment.
Wait, where's Jenkins?
They rushed to the door and looked out into the night. Mr. Jenkins had made it to the edge of the yard. He stood near the sidewalk, pausing to catch his breath, and turned slightly to wave at them. That's when something struck him from the side. A blur, fast, brutal, and full of violence, knocked him to the ground in a single, devastating hit. The sound of bones cracking was sickeningly loud.
Jenkins!
Mason shouted as he bolted down the porch steps. Natalie and Dylan were right behind him. The creature standing over Jenkins was no longer hiding behind a host. It wasn't just a double. It was something fully merged. The man-shaped figure twitched and writhed in place, its skin pale and slick with veins that pulsed under the surface. Its eyes glowed faint red in the streetlight. It turned toward them with a twitch of its head and bared its teeth in a wide, unnatural grin.
Too late.
It hissed.
This one's mine.
There was no trace of Mr. Jenkins left. Natalie froze.
He's dead.
The thing moved quickly, lunging toward Mason with feral speed. Mason barely dodged the swipe of its clawed hand, stumbling back as Dylan grabbed a piece of a broken fence post and swung it hard. It connected, but the demon didn't even flinch. The creature knocked Dylan to the ground and turned to Natalie next. Mason ran and grabbed the nearest thing from the open box on the porch. The exorcism spritz. With no time to think, he squeezed the trigger and sprayed the demon across the face. The effect was immediate. The creature shrieked, a piercing, guttural wail that rattled the windows and jerked back violently as the mist hit its skin. Steam rose in curling tendrils from the sizzling flesh, blisters bubbling up in seconds. Its limbs thrashed wildly, snapping at grotesque angles like marionette strings pulled too hard. Fingers clawed at its own face, ripping at skin that peeled away in strips, revealing something black and slick beneath. The air filled with the stench of burning meat and sulfur as it howled, stumbling backward in blind, spasmodic terror. Mason emptied the bottle, soaking its head and chest. More steam poured off the demon like water hitting a hot stove. Natalie yelled,
It's working. Keep going.
Dylan scrambled to his feet, grabbed the sharp neon cross from the kit, and without hesitation drove it into the creature's chest. A blinding flash of white light erupted across the street, sending Mason and Natalie stumbling backward. When the light faded, the creature was gone. Only a black scorch mark and a pile of ash remained. They stood in stunned silence. The empty spray bottle still dangled from Mason's hand, and the ridiculous neon cross lay smoking in the dirt. Dylan looked down at the mess, then back at the kit's contents.
I can't believe I'm saying this,
He muttered.
but this stupid thing just saved our lives.
Mason didn't respond. He stared at the ashes, jaw tight, heart pounding. They had stopped one of them, barely. But now they knew what it took. And if one of these things was out there, there would be more. Chapter 10. The Map of Madness. The air still hung heavy with smoke and ash. Mr. Jenkins's body lay lifeless just feet from the porch, his broken form already starting to cool under the pale morning light. They had won the battle, but the war was a whole other conquest. Dylan leaned against the porch railing, bruised and breathing hard. Natalie stood nearby, wiping blood from his temple with a damp towel, hands shaking not from fear, but from adrenaline that hadn't yet worn off. Mason sat on the front steps, staring at the remains of the demon, a black, twisted pile of ash that once moved, spoke, killed. He hadn't said a word since it happened. Inside his chest, something stirred. His double. It hadn't spoken yet, but Mason could feel it shifting. Closer. More aware. Distant screams and gnarled hisses could be heard out in the distance, followed by faint traces of sirens and gunshots. There were more out there. The tension broke with the sudden flicker of the TV inside the house. It turned on by itself. No remote, no movement, just static. Loud and sudden. They rushed back inside. The screen buzzed, black and white snow dancing wildly, until the static shifted into the shape of a figure. Lillian. But she wasn't sitting at a desk or on the other end of a phone call. She stood in front of a plain white backdrop, pale and backlit, as if she wasn't entirely there.
Mason,
she said. Her voice was clearer than before, urgent.
you've made contact. You've drawn blood. That means the clock has started.
What clock?
Mason asked.
The mass merging event. Once they have enough hosts, enough bodies, they'll activate the beacon and finish the veil tear. You won't just be seeing demons. You'll be living among them, in their world. There will be no difference.
Where is it?
Natalie stepped forward.
The beacon?
It's in Greyford.
Lillian replied.
Hidden, buried, masked by their presence.
She turned her head slightly, as if hearing something off camera.
You've already been near it. Mason, think.
He blinked.
The factory?
Yes,
She said.
where it started for you. You opened your mind there once. It remembers.
What are we supposed to do when we find it?
Dylan asked.
Destroy it,
She said.
but be warned. They'll be waiting.
The TV snapped off. The room fell silent. Natalie's hand went to Mason's shoulder.
What factory?
There's an old cement plant off Westwood. It's in the same direction as the Greyford mill,
He said.
Back when we were teenagers, we used to sneak in and drink on the roof. I always thought the things I saw there were hallucinations.
They weren't.
Dylan muttered. They packed what they could from the Slayer kit. The cross, another spritz bottle, some of the dumb patches that had proven surprisingly effective, and drove out as dusk rolled in. The factory looked even worse than Mason remembered. Half of the roof had collapsed. Weeds grew between the cracked concrete, and graffiti covered every inch of exposed wall. A rusted chain-link gate stood open, squealing softly in the wind. The sun had already dipped behind the trees by the time they stepped inside. The air was still. Too still. As they moved through the ruined building, Mason led them through the shell of what used to be an operations floor. Steel beams stretched across the ceiling like ribs in a massive, dead animal. Something about the place whispered to him. They pushed deeper, past rusted machinery and broken stairwells, until they found the old elevator shaft, sealed shut now, but behind a rotted panel, a narrow spiral staircase led downward. No one spoke as they descended. At the bottom, they stepped into darkness. A single working light flickered in the center of a concrete chamber. Old filing cabinets sat rusted and broken along the wall. What caught their attention wasn't the machinery. It was the map. A massive wall covered in symbols, burned into the concrete, drawn in blood, charcoal, and some kind of black ink. It was a map of Greyford, but not like any they'd seen before. Streets bent at wrong angles, entire blocks twisted like reflections in a warped mirror, and scattered across the map were red symbols, drawn like eyes, burning into the paper. Each symbol marked a house. Mason recognized a few. the home of the guy who attacked them at the bar. A woman from the paper who'd vanished weeks ago. The Jenkins residence.
They've been tracking people,
Natalie whispered.
choosing hosts.
Beneath the map, a journal lay open on a crate. Scribbled notes filled every page.
The center, the anchor. The beacon lives in the place where the town's soul died. They speak through mirrors, reflections. When the last reflection breaks, they will be flesh.
Natalie read the last line aloud and looked up.
The town's soul, the orphanage.
Greyford Children's Home.
Mason said.
Burned down 20 years ago. I remember hearing that the fire wasn't an accident.
That's where it is.
Dylan said.
That's where the beacon is.
A long, low creak echoed through the room. Mason turned, flashlight scanning the wall. Something moved. And then the whispering started. Low, overlapping voices, dozens of them.
We need to go.
Natalie said, backing toward the stairwell. Before they could move, two figures stepped from the shadows. Both were human once. Their clothes tattered, flesh stretched too thin, movements stilted and jerky. Their eyes glowed with that faint red hue, and their mouths grinned without emotion.
Run.
Mason said. They did, but the demons were faster than expected. The first one lunged at Dylan, knocking him into a pile of rusted chairs. Natalie grabbed the cross from her belt and shoved it into the creature's back, causing it to shriek and twist violently. The second one lunged at Mason. He sprayed the exorcism spritz directly into its face, but this one only staggered, snarling through the mist. It knocked the bottle aside and grabbed Mason by the throat. Inside his head, Mason heard the voice of his own double.
Let me in. Let me fight. Let me finish this.
No.
Mason growled, even as his vision blurred. Dylan swung a rusted pipe, catching the creature in the ribs, and Natalie stabbed it in the throat with the broken tip of the cross. The creature hissed once more and collapsed into black sludge. The other, wounded but not dead, vanished into the wall, disappearing as if the concrete swallowed it whole. Panting, bleeding, they stumbled back out of the room and headed toward the truck.
Wait, we should take that map and journal. It might be useful.
Mason said.
I'll go back to get it. You guys head for the truck.
Dylan and Natalie shared a concerned look.
Just go. I'll be fine.
They left down the hall and out of sight. Mason stepped back through the gaping doorway, his boots crunching over broken glass and charred debris. The flickering light still buzzed overhead, throwing long shadows across the warped concrete walls. The map. He needed the map. If they had any hope of stopping the beacon, that twisted web of symbols could be their guide. But the moment he crossed the threshold, he stopped cold. Something was already there. A figure hunched in front of the wall, its long, clawed fingers dragging across the map like it was reading Braille. Its body twitched with unnatural spasms, and black fluid dripped from its shoulders, soaking the floor beneath it. The creature's head jerked back suddenly, as if it had sensed him. In its hand was torn pieces of the journal and map, along with ash. The creature turned. Its face wasn't like the others. This one looked newer, fresher, as if it hadn't quite settled into the skin it wore. Parts of it shifted, undulating under the surface, like something trapped inside, pushing to get out. Its eyes were white-hot, glowing not with fire, but with something colder, hungrier. Mason didn't move. Neither did it. Then, in a blur of motion, the demon lunged. Mason barely dodged, rolling across the floor as the creature's claws slashed through the air and scraped concrete. He scrambled to his feet and pulled one of the silver charms from his pocket, flinging it toward the thing like a grenade. The charm sizzled on contact, embedding into the creature's shoulder. Smoke rose. It let out a low, gurgling howl. But it didn't stop. The creature charged again, faster this time. Mason grabbed a metal pipe from the floor and swung wide, connecting with a crunch to the thing's jaw. It stumbled back, twisting inhumanly, then dropped to all fours, crawling like an animal across the floor. The light overhead flickered harder now, casting the demon's shadow in dozens of directions. Mason backed up, slipping on damp concrete. The pipe in his hand was slick with blood, or whatever passed for blood inside these things. The creature rose. Its arms snapped into place with a sickening pop. Its head tilted sideways, eyes locking on Mason's face with that same twisted grin his own double had shown him in the mirror.
"You shouldn't be here,"
it hissed.
"You're not ready."
Mason didn't answer. Instead, he rushed it. They clashed, pipe against claw, breath against scream. The creature knocked him into a rusted cabinet, but Mason grabbed a glass vial from his coat pocket and smashed it into the demon's chest. Holy water mixed with salt exploded in a cloud of hissing mist. The creature shrieked, a high, metallic wail that echoed through the chamber. Its skin blistered where the mist touched it, splitting open to reveal writhing black tendrils beneath. It flailed, smashing into the wall and bringing part of the old filing cabinets crashing down. Mason was already moving, grabbing a broken chair leg. He rammed the splintered edge into the thing's throat and drove it back, step by step, toward the map.
"You like tearing things up?"
he growled.
"Try coming back from this."
With a roar, he shoved the creature hard into the burning wall of symbols. The demon's back arched, its body ignited, not with flame, but with light, bright and terrible. It screamed, a sound that was equal parts pain and laughter, before the glow consumed it. And then it was gone. Ash drifted to the floor like snow. The room fell silent again, save for Mason's ragged breathing. He looked around. What was left of the map was ruined, smoldering, torn to shreds. But a few pieces had fallen near the edge of the room, untouched by the fight. Nothing useful. He turned and walked out, bloodied, burnt, and more certain than ever. This was war, and it had already started. Mason made his way to the truck with no further incident. After Mason told the group about the failed attempt to retrieve the map and journal, no one said another word. Mason stared into the mirror. His reflection stared back. And this time, his double wasn't behind him. It was beside him, shoulder to shoulder, wearing the same grin the merged demon had just before it died.
Are you okay?
Natalie asked, breaking tension. Mason didn't take his eyes off the glass.
"I don't think I've got much time."
Thank you for listening to the Halloween Podcast Presents. If you're enjoying these tales of fright, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. If you have any questions, comments, or want to suggest a story idea, send us an email at thehalloweenpodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, head on over to our website, thehalloweenpodcast.com, and pick up some podcast merch. You can also download the entire audiobook now, as well as all our other stories. Join us again next week as we continue our tales. Until next time, this is Lyle Perez saying, have a good night.